VOLIBEAR is Riot's latest and, in my opinion, greatest rework. He went from being a disgusting, boring champion that I would never play to honestly being one of my favorite champions to play at the moment. Normally, I don't like to praise Riot for pretty much anything they do, but they really did a really good job with this champion. He feels amazing to play. So if you haven't already, go out there and try this champion because he is so much fun. I'm actually doing a full VOLIBEAR course over on our website right now as we speak. So if you watch this guide and you decide, you know what, you want more VOLIBEAR, then feel free to check us out using the link in the description below. Keep in mind, we've got courses both on the 5 fundamental roles as well as champion specific courses. So even if you don't like VOLIBEAR and you're looking for some other stuff, we probably have it over on our website. Now let's get right into this rework right away, starting with some of the confusing things that people still haven't figured out yet on VOLIBEAR. First thing I want to cover is what role we should actually be playing VOLIBEAR in, because a lot of people are trying him out top lane, a lot of people are trying him out support. I think a lot of people have figured out that he is a jungler, but if you haven't already, VOLIBEAR is a jungler. His clear speed is insane, his health and sustain in the jungle are absolutely nuts. Like, you can go into the jungle with just 100 or 200 HP, full clear your jungle, and you'll be healthier than when you started. This means that VOLIBEAR has almost no downtime because he only really needs to base if he needs mana or if he needs to buy. As a top laner, he really struggles in the early game against most bruisers, and as a support, he just doesn't have good supportive abilities until he unlocks his ultimate. And at that point, you're really not going to be getting enough levels to make full usage of your ultimate. So he just doesn't seem like a good support to me either. All right, so now that we've established that we're going to be playing VOLIBEAR in the jungle role, how should we be playing this champion? What is the playstyle even? Because this is something that, again, a lot of people are getting wrong. I'm seeing complaints all over the place. VOLIBEAR doesn't do enough damage. I take Conqueror on VOLIBEAR and I can't kill or duel anybody. Well, guess what? VOLIBEAR is not a duelist. He's not a bruiser. He's a tank. Now, there's a lot of people out there who are saying, I'm building VOLIBEAR as a tank and I'm still not successful. And then I'll look at their build and they've got a Triforce. All right, listen here, Mr. Triforce tank VOLIBEAR. Triforce is not a tank item. You build tank items on VOLIBEAR in order to be useful as a tank. That is how you see success with this champion. You can do damage as tank VOLIBEAR without building damage. It's the same idea as Zac. That's right, I'm looking at you. No Triforce, no Blade of the Ruined King, no Warrior, no Bloodrazor. Get those items out of here. We only want tank items. Except for Titanic Hydra. I guess you could build Titanic Hydra, but that's it. That's it. Nothing else. No Black Cleaver, no Triforce, no Bork, nothing. Tank. Now that we got the mini rant out of the way and we've established that VOLIBEAR is a tank jungler, how do we actually want to be playing this champion? What does this champion even do? Let's get into that. The playstyle of this new VOLIBEAR is actually very unique. And the reason being is because he's so strong around neutral objectives with his W. Now, I know you're probably not following here, so allow me to explain. First of all, VOLIBEAR is allowed to indefinitely tank a target so long as he can use his W on it. In fact, you can just tank Baron indefinitely as long as you have mana and you have 2 items. That's it. This means that VOLIBEAR is able to just control neutral objectives, sit on them, and force a fight to happen. VOLIBEAR can also indefinitely tank the enemy team so long he's allowed to cast his W and obviously doesn't die too fast. This means you want to be forcing fights around Dragon, you want to be forcing fights around Baron, because you can just sit there, play slow on the objective, and force the enemy team to come to you before jumping in and just annihilating the enemy. Now, unfortunately, there isn't always a neutral objective to play around. When you take dragons, they go on a cooldown. When you take Rift Herald, again, they're going to be going away for a while. So a lot of the time, there won't be an objective to do, especially if you're focusing on those. But that's okay. VOLIBEAR is also really good at tower diving, like probably the best tower diver in the game. He straight up disables towers. And unless you're playing against something like a Bard that can just put everyone in stasis, it's going to be very hard for them to survive, especially if it's just one person under their tower. For this reason, I absolutely love 4-manning bot lane or ganking mid and diving the enemy mage under their tower, because these kills are very unexpected for those mid laners, if they're sitting under their tower, they're going to think they're fine. But you can just jump in, disable their tower, burst them, and then just walk away for free. The thing you got to be careful about, though, is you need to make sure that you're not getting counter ganked on these dives, because if they take too long, the tower is going to come back up, and then you're going to be at risk of dying. Now, the big mistake that I see a lot of players making is they'll initiate with their ulti on the tower dive. This is not super efficient. You want to actually wait 1 or 2 tower shots before you ult, because this will then reset the tower. This won't reset the aggro, but it will stop the tower from shooting, which is the most important thing. By waiting, you can also kind of tell whether or not you actually need to use your ult in order to perform the dive. There are a lot of cases where you can dive without having to use your ult, and then you can save your ulti for another dive elsewhere on the map. The biggest mistake that I see a lot of players making is they ulti in just a random gank, just for a slow. And this is a pretty big waste because VOLIBEAR's ult is a very long cooldown. This is something you really don't want to do. Even if you're taking Ultimate Hunter, which we'll cover later when we talk about runes, you want to make sure that you're saving your ulti for impactful team fights, because this is such a good ability. You want to save it for either objectives around Dragon and Rift Herald or for dives. This is not to say that you shouldn't use your ulti if you need it to secure a kill, but you shouldn't just be randomly using it off of cooldown just to perform a gank. The difference between a bad Volibear and a good Volibear has a lot to do with how much they're able to use their ult for. If you only get 1 kill from your ulti, then that's not a great ulti. But if you're able to dive the enemy, take a few plates, and then leverage that into an objective, that's a really good ulti. Since it is such a large cooldown, you want it to be as impactful as possible. All right, next let's talk about basic ability usage, both in team fights and in the jungle, because honestly, when I've watched other Volibear players, this has just all been wrong. It's been a disaster. So first of all, on the jungle clear, you really only want to be using your E for its shield on your initial first clear or first 2 clears. Past your initial clear, like once you have Cinderhulk with Blue Smite, you really don't want to be using your E simply for the shield, because it's not going to be as fast of a clear as possible, and no matter what, you're going to end the clear full HP anyways, so you want to make sure you speed up the clear as much as possible. This allows you to be on the map, doing things, ganking, doing objectives, getting scuttles, invading, whatever it is you need to do, you can do it more often if you clear your jungle faster. For this reason, instead of using E on top of yourself for the shield, you want to use your E to pull the next camp towards you. This allows you to transition into your next camp a lot faster, and in some scenarios allows you to do 2 camps at once, which is something that Volley can do really easily because, again, sustain is not an issue for him, and he builds Bomby's Cinder, which does AoE damage, and he has a ton of AoE damage in his kit. Using your E on the next camp will also ensure that you don't drop your passive stacks. This is a lot of AoE damage from the Chain Lightning and attack speed, so the more passive stacks you have, the faster you're going to clear. Not dropping those stacks is very important when clearing on this champion. The next tip that I have for clearing the jungle is going to revolve around his Q. Now, a lot of people are using his Q as an auto attack reset, which on most camps is fine, but the one big thing that you want to make sure of is you don't want to use the Q as an auto attack reset on Raptors. This is because you have Bomby's Cinder and you have your E on the Raptors. So you're already going to do this camp almost instantaneously. The only thing that stops you from instantly deleting this camp is getting minion blocked by the Raptors. That could take half a second to a second off of the camp. But if you use your Q, you get ghosted, which means you can just walk through units, which will allow you to instantly delete the camp. Walking up to auto attack the camp and then using your Q as an auto attack reset is not as efficient as just EQing the camp and then Wing, and it should be dead within less than a second. Again, once you have Cinderhulk, your Q is a CC, so it's going to apply that burst damage from Cinderhulk to everything around you. Then you'll have the AoE from E, and you'll have your W. So an example for how you can make your clear as efficient as possible is while you're doing your red, when you're about to finish it, you cast your E on Raptors, pull the red towards Raptors, and then use your Q on the raptors as soon as you finish the red. Auto attack once, use your W, auto attack until the big raptor is dead, and that should clear the camp instantly. It's little minute things like this that, when they add up over the course of the game, allow you to have 2 or even 3 level leads on the enemy jungler. I think jungle clear efficiency is one of the most important things on VOLIBEAR. You can go into a practice tool yourself and just practice clearing on this champion and getting it down as fast as possible. Because if you do perfect the clear and do it as fast as possible, you can easily do 5 camps into double scuttle and then full clear and be level 6 while your soul laners are still level 5, which then gives you access to a free dive. Of course, this is not a clear that you have to go for. A lot of the time, it's better to gank early on into the game and not try to double scuttle. However, even if this is the playstyle that you like to go for, early clear efficiency is still important here because you need to try and get your pressure out onto the map as quick as possible. Whether that means you're going for an early gank or farming for 6 or just trying to do objectives, either way, the faster you can impact the game, the better. Now, in the team fighting aspect of things, there are a few things you should look to do on VOLIBEAR. The first thing that you need to look to do is to keep your Q up as much as possible. Your Q has a very unique interaction where if you get hit by any immobilization effect, you will bring your Q back off cooldown. For this reason, you can activate your Q and just kind of run at the enemy team and wait for them to CC you, which will then bring your Q off cooldown, and then you can use that to extend the duration of the Q. Now, normally you would think, okay, well, isn't this just easy to play against? Don't you just hold the CC and wait for Volley's Q duration to run out? But Volley has a safeguard to make sure this doesn't happen, and that's the fact that if Volley's Q is active while he ults, it will also reset the cooldown. Because of these two things not being taken into account, a lot of people misjudge Volley's engage range. It is way further than what you think it is. If you need to chase down a target, you can have up to 8 seconds of increased movement speed towards a target on VOLIBEAR. If you get chain CC'd, this movement speed can be even longer than that. Because of the unique mechanic on Volley's Q, he is probably one of the best chasing champions in the entire game. Not that you should chase every opportunity you have, but if you see a target that's low, you might be able to get them when you think that you can't. Now, speaking of chasing, I want to cover VOLIBEAR's runes because this is another point where people are just wrong. A lot of players think that Conquer or Press the Attack, something in the precision tree, is the way to go with VOLIBEAR and you want to build him Bruiser. But this is just not the case. VOLIBEAR does not have good ratios in his kit, and on top of that, his kit doesn't really make sense for a Bruiser. Press the Attack and Conquer are not going to give him a whole lot extra damage, and they're not going to give him a whole lot extra healing. Now, if you don't want to take my word for it, that's fine. Go into a game and just play Conquer or Press the Attack VOLIBEAR, and then afterwards, look at your runes, see how much it's healing you. I guarantee it's way less than what you think it is, and see how much extra damage you get. Again, I guarantee it's less than what you think it is. For runes, you want to take Predator. Predator is just going to be so strong on VOLIBEAR. Since his early ganks aren't great, Predator can help cover that early weakness and give him some more successful ganks early on into the game before maybe he has access to his level 6. Not only is it going to allow you to chase better, dive easier, get to objectives and rotate faster, but it also is going to give you a good, solid amount of damage. This damage is going to be comparable to Press the Attack or Conqueror, but you also get another added benefit to it. VOLIBEAR's kit is strong enough that he really doesn't need anything else on top of it. Movement speed is great, and it helps him engage and get in and do what his champion does, and that's really all he needs to do. If you do opt for Predator, which you definitely should, then you should take Cheap Shot, Eyeball Collection, and Ultimate Hunter as your minor runes. Now, if you are playing at a more advanced level, you might see players that aren't taking Eyeball Collection and might swap it for something else. But for the vast majority of the player base, I think Eyeball Collection is just the best way to go because you don't have to think about stacking that. You just get it from fighting. Now, one thing that you might be thinking is why Ultimate Hunter over Ingenious Hunter when you have Predator? Don't you want to lower the cooldown on your Predator boots as much as possible? Well, yeah, it is very convenient to have a low cooldown on Predator that allows you to obviously use your Predator boots more. But historically for champions who have really impactful team fighting ultimates, it's actually better to use Ultimate Hunter, especially when their ultis have a long cooldown. We saw this in the past when we saw stuff like AP Malphite jungle with Predator. Volley is one of those champions where you want to have your ultimate as much as possible and you don't really build any other active items aside from Predator boots, so you would really only be reducing that cooldown. You can go Ingenious Hunter if you want, but I've personally seen a lot more success with Ultimate Hunter and just being able to have your ulti more frequently to create dives, to team fight, to do whatever it is you need to do, because Volibear's ultimate is insanely strong. For your secondary runes, I always go Sorcery with Nimbus Cloak and Celerity or Water Walking. Celerity is really strong on Volibear because he has a lot of move speed in his kit from his Q and from Predator, so you're going to be drawing a lot of efficiency from taking Celerity. It also applies to the Nimbus Cloak movement speed bonuses, so he's definitely going to be making good usage of Celerity. Now, personally, I prefer to run Nimbus Cloak and Water Walking, but this is because I play so heavily around objectives, neutral objectives like Dragon and Rift Herald and Baron, and Water Walking gives me that bonus while I'm doing those objectives. It allows me a team fight easier around them, gives me a little bit of extra damage on them, so I like Water Walking for that aspect. It also allows you to just path through the river faster and go from lane to lane or invade a little bit faster. So this is the reason why I personally take Water Walking over Celerity, but they're pretty interchangeable and it's up to player preference. Now let's quickly brush on team fighting because a lot of players again are doing this wrong. This is not a surprise because the champion is brand new. People haven't seen anything like this before, so it's going to take a lot of getting used to. Most people on Volibear are used to just diving the enemy backline and locking them down, but keep in mind that Volibear's pick potential for his team is not that good. He can kind of disrupt in the backline, but he's not super good at giving access to that backline to the rest of his team like he used to be. He doesn't have that flip anymore. He can't interrupt dashes, right? So he needs to do something else with his new kit. The two things that Volibear is much better at than he was before is soaking and sustaining through a fight, and also disabling the towers. This is something that he never used to be able to do unless you were Trick 2G and you built an Ohm Wrecker, which you shouldn't have been doing, but if you were doing it, then, well, now your ulti does that. So now that we know we're not just diving the backline in every single fight and trying to blow up their squishy, how should we actually play the fight? Well, your number one priority should always be disabling the tower. If a tower is playing a role in the fight, you need to disable it. Make sure you ulti that tower, even if there aren't minions around and your ulti won't do full damage to it. You want to make sure that that tower isn't screwing your team over. Your number two priority is finding a target, preferably a champion, that you are easily going to have access to throughout the whole fight. You want to focus on that target and try to W them as many times as possible. This is going to make you as durable as possible in a fight, and it's going to give you a ton of sustain. You want to try not to focus on Wing a target that you think is going to die early on in a fight, because that means you're going to have to apply your W to a new target before you can gain access to that sustain again. Now, if you can just burst one of the enemy's damage dealers and completely remove them from a fight, that's also good. But remember, Volibear doesn't just burst targets anymore. If you can kill the enemy backline carry with a full combo and you're Titanic, then definitely do it. But if not, then look to W the tank or something durable. Your main goal as a tank is just to soak as much damage as possible, and the easiest way to do that is just to get as many Ws off on the same target and heal as much as you can throughout a fight. Let your bruisers, your assassins, your divers take care of the enemy backline carries and just stand in front of yours, making sure that their damage threats don't have access to yours. Zone when you can, disable towers when you can, but other than that, just look to heal and sustain through a fight and survive. You're going to gain access to your damage by surviving through the fight. Obviously, use your E to get as many shields as possible. You don't just want to be using this ability to try and willy-nilly hit the backline with it. You want to use this ability for a shield in the late game. It's also going to do more damage to the tank because tanks have more HP, so just drop it on yourself when you're dueling the tank or hitting the tank with your wet noodle fight while the enemy backline carries or damage threats both hit you. This is just the best way to play Volley. This is why it's so important to not go Bruiser on Volibear. You're going to be getting hit by like 3 or 4 members of the enemy team, so you need to be able to survive that. If you go Black Cleaver or Trinity Force or Blade of the Ruined King, you're just not going to be able to survive. With how mediocre his damage numbers are and how his kit is just not designed to dive and kill targets, you're probably not going to kill the enemy backline if you build this anyways. So what do we build to be doing the best mixture of damage and have as much survivability as possible on VOLIBEAR then? Well, first of all, of course, right away, you want your Bomby Cinder into Cinderhulk with Blue Smite. This is just going to allow you to clear the jungle as quickly as possible. Don't go Red Smite. Again, you're going to be getting hit by multiple targets. You're not a duelist. You don't want to reduce the damage from one incoming target. The movement speed is going to be much better. It's going to allow you to gank much easier. Think of things like Zac. You take Blue Smite to help you get onto targets, to help you do more in a team fight. You don't really want the damage reduction that Red Smite gives. Volley's a tank, so he wants Blue Smite. Immediately afterwards, you definitely want to make sure that you finish your boots. And the reason why you want to do this is because this is going to give you so much, especially on a tank. With Ninja Tabi, it's going to reduce a lot of incoming damage from basic attacks, but if you're playing against something with just an unreal amount of CC, then you might need Merc Shreds just so you can actually play the game. Most tanks do prefer to take Tabi when they can, but again, if you need the Merc Shreds, just get the Merc Shreds. After this, CDR is really important. The more CDR you have on Volley, the more access you're going to gain to your W, which means more healing, more damage, more everything. It's also going to lower your ulti cooldown by a ton, which allows you to, again, impact the game as much as you can. Kindle Gem and Glacial Shroud are going to be your go-to options here. They give you some pretty good tank stats and really cheap CDR. This is 20% CDR while only having to spend 1700 gold, which is a pretty good deal. After this, you've got a few options. You could either finish your Kindle Gem into a full Spirit Visage if you're into heavy magic damage. This will give you a lot more healing from your Ws and some magic resist to help survive. If you're just looking to impact the map and gank as much as possible, Righteous Glory is going to be a really good option, and you can finish your Glacial Shroud into that. If you're looking to rush an armor item immediately after finishing your Kindle Gem and Glacial Shroud, then you'll definitely want to go for this. But if you're into some hybrid damage and it doesn't look like Righteous Glory is going to help you gank that much, and it doesn't look like Spirit Visage is going to help you all that much either, you can instead opt for a Warmogs. This allows you to stay on the map indefinitely, especially if you have blue buff, and it means you only have to base when you have the gold to buy something. It's also going to give you quite a bit of damage because your W actually has an HP ratio on it. A W on a wounded target is going to do almost 10% of your max HP in damage, so it will give you quite a bit. However, if you want damage, then your go-to item should be Titanic. This gives a ton of HP, it gives a ton of AD, your W and Q both apply on-hit effects, which Titanic Hydra has, and it gives an active. It's insanely expensive, but if you can finish buying it early on into the game because you're snowballing or for whatever reason, then it's going to give you the best chances at fighting. With this item, you actually will have the damage to take out a backline carry. Again, it's really expensive, so sometimes you're just not going to want this item. My favorite full build at the moment is Cinderhulk, Ninja Tabi, Titanic Hydra, Spirit Visage, either Iceborne Gauntlet or Righteous Glory, and Warmogs. You'll see that there's only one damage item in there, and that's Titanic Hydra. And the only reason why I'm building Titanic on VOLIBEAR is because he just has so much health that the item is just going to do so much damage. Health is just such an important stat on VOLIBEAR. You might as well double dip with it. Remember, your Cinderhulk is going to be giving you more bonus HP, which is then going to interact with your Titanic Hydra. It's going to interact with your W, both the healing and the damage from it. It's going to interact with your ulti. Like, all of these things are going to come together to just make you so much stronger. Throw a few resistances on there and some CDR, and VOLIBEAR becomes pretty terrifying. You just gotta make sure that you stop building Trinity Force, Black Cleaver, Blade of the Ruined King, Ginsu's, all of these items that were designed to do damage, because that's not how you're gonna see success on VOLIBEAR. Now, finally, I wanna go over my favorite clear. Personally, I think you should always start red on VOLIBEAR because this is just going to be the healthiest and fastest clear with him. Personally, I like to go red, Krugs, blue, Gromp, Wolves, first Scuttle Crab, then second Scuttle if it's still up, then Raptors, then Krugs again, then reset. Unfortunately, you do have to go red Krugs blue because you need mana, and if you do wolves before blue, it's just gonna slow down your clear way too much. After blue, we go straight into Gromp because this is just the fastest way to clear your camps. You can pull blue towards Gromp a lot easier than you can pull your blue towards wolves. You can also pull Gromp towards wolves easier than you can pull it towards Scuttle. It also just prevents you from crisscrossing all over yourself. It gets you to Scuttle about a second or two faster. Perfecting this clear will allow you to get to your Scuttle Crab when it spawns with Smite Up. I smite Krugs initially and then as needed for HP. If you do the first Scuttle and it's uncontested, then chances are the enemy jungler is on the other Scuttle, but you can go check it anyways if you want. Really, it's up to you. If not, you can look for a gank. Now, a different clear that you can go instead is you can just go red, blue, Gromp, and then look to gank with your level 3. However, I really don't like this because it feels like you're just kind of coin flipping. Scuttle definitely won't have spawned by this point, so if your gank is unsuccessful, you'll just be waiting around for Scuttle to spawn, and then you won't get level 4 off of it, so if it's contested, you're not in a great spot. If all goes well, you can double Scuttle and then hit level 5 off of your initial clear while having your Cinder Hulk and a blue smite. This puts you in a really good position to finish your second clear and then hit level 6 before other players on the map have and force a dive with your insane level 6. It's my opinion that VOLIBEAR is a level 6 jungler simply because his ulti is just so strong. Anytime you find yourself having downtime in the jungle because all of your camps are cleared, you should look to do a neutral objective like Dragon or Rift Herald. Obviously, just gank whenever you see the opportunity because this is how you play jungle. But other than that, make sure you're doing your camps, make sure you're doing neutral objectives because again, Volley's so strong on neutral objectives, he can tank them forever. If you're able to put all of these things together as sort of an amalgamation of how to play the new VOLIBEAR, then I guarantee you're going to see so much more success than if you just play him as a Bruiser or if you play him with Conqueror or various other things. The VOLIBEAR rework has felt so strong to me simply because this is the way that I'm playing him, and I've seen a lot of success with him. I think that a lot of the complaints that VOLIBEAR sucks will stop once people realize that this is probably the best way to use him. I know I covered so much in this guide, but there's just so much depth to this champion that people have not realized yet. So if you want even more, I'm doing a VOLIBEAR course over on our website, GameLeap.com. Over there, I cover absolutely everything, and you can see just how broken this champion is when played properly. I think that all of the cries for buffs for this champion are completely unnecessary. I think that VOLIBEAR is really, really strong in the right hands, so make sure to check that out if you want your best opportunity at just abusing this champion, because honestly, he's so broken. Our website has other content too. It's not just VOLIBEAR. We've got hundreds of guides, all done by challenger players, and it's sorted into a quick and easy to use courses system. So we have courses both on the 5 fundamental roles, as well as a ton of champion specific courses. If that is something that interests you, then make sure to check it out using the link in the description below. As always, I'm Panther. I hope you learned something valuable, and I will see you in the next one.